Welcome to Snippets of Wisdom with your host, Dr. Mike Corral and Dr. Michael J. Murphy. Snippets of Wisdom is the boomer's gift to the next generation and to the world at large. Dr. Michael J. Murphy and Coach Dr. Mike Corral are experienced psychotherapists, writers, and healers who find the greatest satisfaction in sharing the benefits of a lifetime of struggle and learning. Coach Mike has spent decades spreading deep wisdom and supporting youth through the juvenile justice system. Dr. Michael has directed mental health services at many correctional centers and testified in countless trials as an expert in sex-related issues and mental illness. And he was one of the 500,000 humans at Woodstock. So now, please welcome the hosts of Snippets of Wisdom.
Hello and welcome. Dr. Mike Corral here with Dr. Michael Murphy. We are your co-hosts here on Snippets of Wisdom. In the 2024 interview on London Real, Tony Seba predicts that the next 10 years will be the most disruptive in human history. It's true, but he says humans are linear thinkers living in a non-linear world. And it's true, we're wired for gradual change, but the world is shifting in leaps, S-curves, exponential jumps, 10x cost collapses. Dr. Murphy, how does this mismatch affect us? What do you think it's going to do to us?
Well, it's just great to be with you all again and with our audience out there. And I'm so happy to be talking about this subject, which really is engaging and complex. I mean, the foundation of it is that it appears to be the case that with the advent of AI and changes in the access of humanity to virtually boundless energy, that we will have what appears to be an age of abundance with regard to material objects and such. And so we're going to be confronted with a change in how we manage ourselves as human beings on this planet. It's really going to be a time of transformation that we have thought about and anticipated, we boomers, for decades and decades. You know, we can remember, and we've talked before about the old New York World's Fair in I think it was 1965, when we anticipated, this beautiful, wondrous future with flying cars and boundless energy and space exploration and, lots of cooperation and peace on the planet. And since that time, well, we've had our share of struggles, as we can see from the news every day, with all of the conflicts on the planet, environmental issues, and just the struggle to survive. One of the things that I think is critical is how humanity's need for safety will interact with these transformative processes that are happening. The fundamental one being, as we talked about, the age of abundance. When we finally get what we seek, and that is the opportunity to live with all the assets that we need in terms of survival, we don't have to worry anymore about whether we're going to be able to get through the day or the week or the month or the year, because we will have the technology and the energy delivery systems that will allow us to pretty much do whatever we want. So that raises another whole series of questions that I know you've been thinking about as well, and both of us have been over the course of our lifetimes. So we're really looking forward to talking about that in depth today.
Yeah, it seems like the world is moving faster than we can keep up with. Our nervous system can only integrate so much. And what happens, I think, is we default to fear, remembering the good old days, or even denying that it's even possible, for something like this to happen. But what I think everybody out there, all of our listeners need to hear is that these are going to be some welcome disruptions that we can actually, take a sigh of relief. These are not random things. We can prepare with some calm, with some positive expectation. These are patterned changes that he's talking about. They're predictable, correct? Don't they follow? They follow what he calls it an S curve of disruption.
Right. One of the things that uh, the people have talked about in the past, sort of in a sense of with a sense of irony, is that be careful what you wish for. You might just get it. And
Right.
and in these days, it appears that humanity might just have the opportunity with AI and boundless energy to actually get what we want in terms of um, our ability to survive and basically have the rudiments of um, you know the opportunity to not have to work endlessly and with great sacrifice to survive. So the survival aspect is going to be sort of off the table in the sense that that's going to be taken care of. And so it's just really, really a very interesting opportunity for us then to be faced with um, how do we achieve a sense of purpose and a sense of engagement in our daily lives if we're not faced with this survival issue every day. Uh,
Right.
so I think that's the key, and I think we've been accustomed as a human species to be dealing with these critical issues of risk and danger and possible death that for so long, really, that's been how we've managed our consciousness day in and day out
Mhm.
for thousands of years, that it's really important for us to have the opportunity to talk about how things will be different for us when we no longer need to worry about those issues of survival due to the advent of AI and the opportunity to have access to boundless sources of energy,
Mhm.
which Tony Seba is really pointing out will be the case probably in less than 10 years. So less than 10 years, we're going to have some clarification about the new way forward and
Mhm.
how are we going to construe it all. And I think it's
Mm.
just a really um, positive opportunity. Can we choose to be happy when we do have an opportunity to actually have what we want? We can live, we can, it's funny. I like to tell this story when I was very young and I just got out of college. Was struggling to find a job, that kind of thing, the stage in life where you're just trying to get started. Finally, I found a job working at a school for so-called special needs children and young adults. And so I got this job working at what's called a residential school in the Berkshires of Massachusetts. And I realized when I got that job that that job was exactly what I wanted to do to
Mhm.
fulfill myself. I mean, I was able to work with and give some degree of increased satisfaction to these people who really needed service. And I
Mhm.
was able to be of service to them in a way that made something of a difference. And I said, "Hey, I'm basically there. I'm doing what I want. I'm doing something that meets the needs of others. So this is how I would choose to live my life if I had
Mm.
the freedom to do so." And so I was doing it at that point. So I think all of us are going to face that kind of situation going forward now. What will we choose to do when we really are free to choose what we want to do to fulfill ourselves?
Wow. That is so impactful, like nothing we have ever expected. You know, it's as if we are conditioned to move slowly, 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 then all of a sudden everything changes. We have electric vehicles, we have solar energy, we have AI that can think for us, AI that can take care of all of our business operations and everything, robotics, we have precision, and all of these things are happening at so quickly that it's hard for us to wrap our head around it. so to speak. And it's almost as if our collective identity is geared towards dealing with scarcity, slow pacing, waiting for approval, and things like that. Go
Right.
ahead.
Yeah, for all of the history of humanity, we have been faced with struggle. And we're programmed as human beings to look for the struggle. Like, what's the risk that I have to deal with today? What's the problem? What's the issue that I need to struggle with now in order to survive? And so, it, as you say, I mean, we've anticipated that that's going to change. And at some point, we're going to get to the point where this ideal future becomes a reality. But it never has actually gotten there. We've been
Yeah.
thinking about it and fantasizing about it for centuries, but
Mhm.
we haven't really gotten there. But it appears like that S curve phenomenon that you described, it's finally going to come. Like, better
Yeah.
late than never. I mean, finally, this opportunity to live in a way that we really choose to live is going to arrive at long last. And we're going to be presented then, that is within the next 2, 3, 5, 8 years,
Yeah.
with that uh, that issue. I mean, what are we going to do to fill our time and fill our sense of purpose and meaning and usefulness when we
Mhm.
really do have freedom? The what we can call, some people have talked about the burden of freedom. When you don't have freedom, you
Interesting.
kind of don't have any problems because you just do what you have to do. But
Yeah.
now, I mean, we are, as a species, coming to the point where we actually do have to engage and deal with this apparent uh, burden of freedom and freedom of choice that we will have within a very short period of time. And I think that's, can we as human beings choose to be happy when we have the chance to be happy? That's sort of the
Mhm.
big question. It's
Yeah.
not in the, so I come from an Irish background, and really it's not the sort of the historical intention of the Irish people to expect the best. We're worried about survival. For centuries, we've had to sort of deal with the problems uh, of safety. And I think now, um, all over the world, we're faced with this whole new challenge.
Mhm. It's interesting because you say that you describe the Irish culture that is so typical of a lot of other cultures where they feel the need to just hunker down and work through it. You know, hunker down, accept the difficulty as it is, work through it, and just do the best you can with what you have. Um, and that's not with 100% anticipation of a good outcome. It's expecting, to at least get something for your labor and effort, but there is a lot of identity work there that needs to take place for such a big change to happen. It's almost as if we need to do some kind of a contrastive analysis to see, compared to what we're used to, what adjustments do we need to make now emotionally, spiritually? How do we apply our intelligences, our creative intelligence, our spiritual intelligence, all of our intelligences to this new idea? When we come back, let's talk more about that, Dr. Murphy, because I think this is going to be an interesting question for everybody to ponder. So stay with us, folks. Don't go away.
Mike Zorek, a three-time California state champion in Greco-Roman wrestling at 114 pounds. Mike, blind since birth, was born in Hartford, Connecticut. He was a six-time national placer, including 2 seconds, 2/3, and 2/4. He also won the Veterans Folk-Style Wrestling twice at 152 pounds. In all these tournaments, he was the only blind competitor. Nancy Zorick, a creative spirit whose talents have taken her to the stage and into galleries and exhibitions in several states. Her father, a commercial artist who shared his instruments with his daughter and helped her fine-tune her natural abilities, influenced her decision to follow in his footsteps. Ms. Zorick has enjoyed a fruitful career doing what she loves. Listen Saturday mornings at 12 Eastern for the Nancy and Mike Show for heartwarming stories and interesting talk.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of The Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on The Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
And welcome back. Thanks for staying with us. Dr. Murphy, I have a question for you. Tony Seba alludes to the use of what he's calling stellar energy, as something that would trigger the collapse of scarcity as we know it and trigger an abundance that we're not used to. Let's start with the energy part of it. What is he arguing about that?
My understanding is that what is going to happen, and this is going to happen soon, we're not talking, it's not indefinite future, it's going to be within a few years, that as a result of AI's interaction with the means of production of energy, solar energy in particular, we will be able to have incremental increases in the efficiency of access to solar energy sources. So virtually infinite energy, which can power the new robots that are being developed now that can do the manual labor that has, over the course of all history, been done by human beings at great expense. But now that that can be done, now that virtually endless energy is available through the more efficient harvesting of solar energy, going from panels that are maybe 4 or 5% efficient to, in the 90s. So you're just going to be incremental increases in the
You're talking
efficiency of
about
harvesting
solar
solar
panels.
energy
Mhm.
and thermal energy, and then the actual implementation and utility of those sources of energy through robotics and the efficiency of, just kind of the machine utilization and development of the actual labor being done by robots. So the combination of those things is going to result in this uh, mercurial increase in the availability of energy and the implementation of energy. So that's the reality of it. We are going to be able to harvest that and get what we want in terms of energy for virtually nothing within the near term. So, people have talked about the downside of this too, or the anxiety about it, because we can always find a reason to worry about things, right? so,
We're good at
so
that.
even if we have everything, then we can find a reason to worry about it. But when we do have that, we then have to understand, what does humanity do? What do we do when we are not motivated by the crisis of the day, or the problem, or the latest war, the latest conflict? I mean, now we have whatever conflict is going on in the world now, and the media's attention and the government's attention and technology's attention is focused on the crisis of the moment. And so when that is no longer necessary, when we're not fighting over resources anymore, we all have what we need in order to survive. Then what do we do? And that is the fundamental question. And I think we then have the opportunity and the obligation to have a conversation.
Mhm.
That hard conversation about what is the meaning of life?
Right.
Why are we here? Why are we on the planet? What am I as a human being? What is my purpose as a human being? What should I do with the time that I have on this day, in this week, in this year, in this lifetime? So I think those are the fundamental issues that we're going to need to face. I mean, fundamentally, they're philosophical issues, they're values-based issues
Mhm.
that all of us need to face. And, you know, can we dare, do we dare to be optimistic about the future and think about what is possible in a positive way and be optimistic about what's coming for us?
Yeah.
That's the whole thing. Like, do we dare to be happy? So many people I remember, you don't want to be happy because maybe you'll be disappointed. And so, so you don't dare to be happy, but do we dare to anticipate a positive future and think, what are we going to do when we can really do what we want and think is best and care about each other? So, one of the things that I've thought about a lot in my travels in life, and I'm a relatively older person now, when now that we
Tony
boomers
Seba.
are older and we have a lot of years of experience, I mean, I know I've seen that most of the human beings who I encounter in my travels in life are good people. I mean,
Mhm.
most people want to do the right thing. They want to be kind. If you
Yeah.
meet someone on the street and ask them for directions, or you just run into somebody and have a conversation in a shop, they're pleasant, optimistic, caring, kind people. And that's the positive aspect of humanity that we need to actualize now and understand that's the reality. It's going to be okay. Can we
Yes.
choose to believe that versus, oh, what's the horrible issue that we have to worry about today? So I think that shift is a gigantic shift in human awareness
Yeah.
now on the planet. And we have this whole construct of nations and countries, and we compete with each other, and capitalism is about competition, and somebody's got to win and somebody's got to lose. Well, that's going to change. That's going to be different. We're going to have an opportunity, an opening to do things in a different way, and that's a huge shift in
Yeah.
human awareness. And I'd just be interested in hearing your thoughts about that too, Coach Mike.
It's beginning to make a lot more sense. Seeing how over the last couple of decades, it's been, people have been talking about the law of attraction and getting what you focus on. People have been focusing on what they want or talking about it at the very least. And as a baby boomer, our thing has our thing has always been about peace and love and living together and sharing humanity together and opening our hearts and all of these beautiful ideas. The question is, are we prepared for it to happen quickly, relatively quickly in the next 10 years? Are we prepared to get what we want? So it's nice to imagine what you want with all of the detail and focus on it, but are we prepared for a rapid timeline? Are we, emotionally, intellectually, and spiritually prepared for it to happen this soon?
It's
Next,
so interesting. I remember years and years ago, as I've probably said ad nauseum, I was at Woodstock. I
I
just
know.
happened to be there. One of my sisters was going somewhere. I didn't know where she was going. She asked me if I wanted to jump in the car, and I did. And the next thing I knew, I was at this huge field in New York State, and had quite an experience over the next couple of days. And I was just faced as I walked around in this mass of people. Gee, this is really different.
Yeah.
Maybe life can be really different. I was faced for the first time, as you say, peace, love, and understanding. That's what we thought could be real. Maybe
Hmm.
the life that my parents lived of labor and work and sacrifice doesn't have to be the way that it is all the time.
Right.
Maybe it can be different. Maybe we can say, how do I want to live my life in a meaningful way that is best for all of us? All of us together. Once again, peace, love, and understanding. We're going to do what we can for everybody. If you have a sandwich, you share half the sandwich with somebody else, just
Yeah.
because you want to, and you don't need the whole thing. So the sharing part is about to happen. The universe is being generous with us, we think, in these coming years with uh, the beneficence of energy, creating the possibility for us to do pretty much whatever we want, and then to figure out what we want to do with the bounty that we have been given. So it's almost like we're back in the Garden of Eden in some sense. I'm
Mm.
not saying it's all going to be that rosy, but there is a situation where we do have an opportunity to live the life that we want to, and think about the goals that we think are most worthwhile when we really have the freedom to choose.
You know, I think it would help for us to take another look at how and why this could even be possible. Because Seba talks about robots creating other robots, uh, and transportation becoming autonomous. In other words, robo taxis that just drive you wherever you need to be, and uh, the cost of transportation 90% cheaper than it is now. Cities redesigning themselves. You know, the car ownership declines because now we have taxis that drive you wherever you need to go. And this is the future of mobility we're talking about. And he's talking about. It's We have to really look at that. What does that mean? We have to extrapolate. What's going to happen as a result of that, and how is that going to begin to change our thoughts, our feelings, our spirituality, our spiritual intelligence. You know.
Yeah, the whole issue of spiritual intelligence and our ability to explore the world as we want to, because we human beings, I mean, fundamentally, I think, and I'm interested in hearing your thoughts about that and the thoughts of our audience too, about, what, once again, the question, why are we here? I mean, really, as human beings, we're designed to explore and to learn and
Yeah.
to grow. That's really how we're wired. We have these brains that need to learn more. As you say, the psychological intelligence, the
Mhm.
emotional intelligence,
Mhm.
creative intelligence, these different forms of intelligence that we as human beings have the capacity to actualize. And we've been constrained largely in the past by uh, some kind of crisis that's been going on in the world or in society. And now, as that burden uh, really appears to lessen and perhaps even disappear, we really do have the opportunity to actualize those forms of intelligence that we have been given. We can be all that we can be, as we say. Uh, can we? Can we be? Can you be all you can be? Can I be all I can be? And that's the challenge that I need to face that challenge. And, we can talk about when we come back, really all of the different avenues that we can take when we
Mm.
really have the opportunity to face that choice of becoming all that we can be. And we'll be
Absolutely.
back in a little bit to talk about that.
Master of words, powerful player. What life-changing words can Dr. Janet Smith Warfield pull out of her magical toolbox that just might mysteriously open a door you never knew was there? A door to free yourself from fear forever. Transform your rage into right action. Release your guilt. Position you into a life of freedom, purpose, passion, power, and peace. All quite suddenly, unexpectedly, and almost miraculously, with no effort on your part. Join Dr. Janet on Dancing with Words Dancing with Wisdom, as she and her guests show you how words map our experiences, immersing you in a sound bath that relaxes your muscles, opens your mind, and supports you in co-creating your extraordinary life. Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness: Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them, rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals.
So, Dr. Murphy, with this whole new proposal of abundance and uh, everything being accessible, everything that we need being accessible, and we're no longer going to have to worry about, where things are going to be coming from, or the authority to do such certain things. Clear-cut applications of our spiritual intelligence, our creative intelligence are now going to come into play. This is really going to tap into our search for meaning, and we've talked about this on other shows. What is your take on how this is going to unfold with regard to our sense of meaning in an era of abundance versus conflict and tragedy?
In the past, we've talked about Viktor Frankl's great book, Man's Search for Meaning, when
Hmm.
he was confronted during World War II and the horrors of the final solution to lose members of his family. I mean, to be confined in a concentration camp where he was faced with hard labor for years, imminent death, just really tragic, negative situations, and yet he determined that he was going to make a conscious decision about the meaning of his life, and that he would live each day as positively as he could, as he
Hmm.
could, even when faced with these terribly challenging circumstances. That he chose to be free. That man's search for meaning is woman's search for meaning. Humanity's search for meaning is really something that is a freedom we can claim, even in the most negative circumstances. So, how do we apply that, though, when we face a circumstance where we are free, when it's
Right.
not a matter of compensating for a horrible situation or a really negative and challenging and painful situation, but one in which we find ourselves with an opportunity to define our reality as we choose to? We've talked about the issue of psychological projection. We really create our reality through projection oftentimes. When
We
you
do.
ask someone, how do you feel about this? And what do you think about that? I mean, people come up with how they choose to understand reality and what they project into a situation. Is it an attitude of possibility and positive anticipation and warmth and engagement and charity, or is it an attitude of fear and anxiety and conflict? And so that's the dichotomy that we face. And I think we are really going to be faced with needing to make that choice in the most responsible way go, going forward. And I think it's just it's really a wonderful opportunity that we need to accept the responsibility of being positive. As
Mhm.
odd as that's, I mean, can you, when we have what we want and need, how will we handle that? And one of the underlying issues, I think, is when technology and the superabundance of energy gives us this kind of freedom of opportunity, um, will we be able to accept that in a positive way and discover a sense of purpose that really is the opportunity for us all to cooperate with each other and to come up with a plan for the distribution of resources that
Mhm.
works for us.
Yeah.
So that's the big one. So even now we're sort of with the re-advent, people are talking about socialism more, communism,
Mhm.
uh, deficits of capitalism, that sort of how do we choose to distribute resources in a way that really works for all of us.
Yeah.
And that opportunity is really coming now. It's really going to be there right in
Yeah.
front of us. And we're going to have to decide, I mean, how do we create a power structure of some kind
Yeah.
that's different from the ones that we've had in the past, that really works to create a structure in which we distribute the resources of this beautiful planet and this universe in a way that respects the planet and the universe and also is just and fair with regard to the whole population of
Yeah.
humanity.
You know, when you think about Maslow's hierarchy of needs and Dr. Claire Graves' biodynamics values levels, it's seeing how survival is no longer going to be the primary driver, and humans are now going to be shifting towards meaning and contribution, creativity, and relational depth. It looks like an acceleration of the evolution of our values. In other words, according to Maslow, the basic human needs are survival and procreation. And then as you look at his hierarchy, it leads towards meaning and divine identification, identifying with our highest self. And as Dr. Claire Graves talks about, those same basic needs create our values. At the very basic level, it's survival, procreation, and as we grow and evolve as a human race, our values become more aligned with having purpose and meaning as you move up the hierarchy. So with all of these changes that Seba's talking about at the rate that he's describing them, it's almost as if we're going to be accelerated, into higher levels of higher values levels and higher levels of purpose, more like our highest self.
You know, it's interesting that you talk about that, in that Tony Seba talked about how humanity for thousands of years has been deeply involved in the means of production. I mean, we needed to have lots of children because we had to produce huge amounts of food and farming, and the whole labor aspect of survival was very, as they say, labor intensive. We needed lots of labor. And most of us were engaged in that labor, whether we're painting houses or doing farming or constructing buildings, working in factories, whatever needed to be done, there was a big need for labor. And that's what's being changed now. That's going
Yeah,
to be done by technology. So
yeah,
so you use the word creativity. So it just creates that opportunity for creativity. So we're going to be called upon not to be involved in the means of production and labor for many hours every day, but rather to be confronted with the opportunity to express our most creative aspects every
yeah,
day. So it's
yeah.
when you're obliged to live a creative life, well, that's a pretty big challenge. It's a positive challenge for humanity, but
Absolutely.
it's a big challenge.
Big.
It's not easy to be the most creative person you can be when you're
No, it
faced
isn't.
with, yeah, what can you do? What can you generate, when you have the opportunity to generate whatever you feel is
Doesn't
best.
big questions. Not only that, what is our palette? What are we working with? And what is our canvas, or what is our stage? Where are we going to, project our creativity? Are we going to project it onto something that we need, or are we going to project it onto ourselves as other humans? How is that going to work? What is our stage going to look like? Our canvas for all of this creativity. We have used creativity in technology, in the workforce. During the World War, that creativity was in manufacturing and agriculture and things like that. And so, if that all of that stuff is going to be done with automated labor, what does that do for us as humans? How do we apply that creativity? You know, what do we get
Right.
creative with?
When we move beyond the means of survival and the obligation that most of us have, as boomers, have spent our lives engaged in, whether you're school teachers or plumbers or carpenters or brain surgeons or attorneys, whatever we've done for all of our lifetime, uh, is no longer necessary as labor. And then we're faced with defining what the new challenges are. And maybe we want to, as some more pioneering spirits want to do, to explore other planets. Star Trek. We we want to go off
Mhm.
into space and find out what's out there, and really invest our resources and intelligence and enthusiasm and courage into the task of just understanding more deeply what exists in this universe. We want to understand more. Okay, well, that's an opportunity that we will have going forward when we have conquered, if you will, or um, I'm thinking of the word that we've encompassed and overcome the necessity of spending all our time in the effort to survive and to get
Mhm.
what we need in order to be alive this day, this week, this month, this year. So I
Yeah.
think that's the thing, and it's really a beautiful choice to have, and it's a projection again. We can choose to think, gee, this is really a glorious time for humanity. Can we choose to believe that this is a glorious time for humanity? We may
Mhm.
have the opportunity to really become all that we have the potential to become.
Yeah.
And that's really remarkable. You think, what could that actually be? What
What would it
can we
look like?
create? Yeah. How beautiful will uh, the work of art be that we have the opportunity to create when we have the freedom to create it? I think
Yeah.
that's the big thing. When we have that choice to um, manifest whatever we can, will it be a work of beauty, or will it be something uh, much less glorious?
You
We're going to
know,
find out.
it reminds me, it makes me think that maybe it will all be more spontaneous and incidental to the trek, using the term from Star Trek. When
Right.
you look at Star Trek, every adventure was something new that they were discovering in their journey as they were making their treks through another universe, another planet, or whatever it was. And the spontaneity with which they dealt with every new crisis was key. I wonder if that's how it's going to be for us. We're going to talk a little bit more about this when we come back. We'll talk about food, fermentation, the dual economy, and see how all of that is going to come into play. Don't go away.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of the Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on the Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
Master of words, powerful player. What life-changing words can Dr. Janet Smith Warfield pull out of her magical toolbox that just might mysteriously open a door you never knew was there? A door to free yourself from fear forever. Transform your rage into right action. Release your guilt. Position you into a life of freedom, purpose, passion, power, and peace. All quite suddenly, unexpectedly, and almost miraculously, with no effort on your part. Join Dr. Janet on Dancing with Words, Dancing with Wisdom, as she and her guests show you how words map our experiences, immersing you in a sound bath that relaxes your muscles, opens your mind, and supports you in co-creating your extraordinary life.
Welcome back. So, Tony Seba predicts that precision fermentation, essentially brewing proteins, is the way that we will enhance food production. And he's talking 10 times cheaper. He's talking with 99% less land and water. That's totally amazing, and it just kind of baffles the mind to think about that. By comparison, Dr. Murphy, the old system was expensive, centralized, and resource intensive. And since we're moving out of an extraction mindset for our planet, how is this transition going to take place? How is it going to make people feel?
Oh, it's just such a monumental shift. As he said, it's going to be roughly 100% more efficient when you
Yeah.
apply AI to the means of production of nutrients. I mean, what do we need in order to survive? And there may be somewhat of a conflict between what do we like to eat versus
What do we need?
what's the most efficient for us to consume in terms of the planet and our own health. But that's a choice that I think we can make in a really sensible way, and we really will have the opportunity to not have to struggle to find literally the nutrients that we need in order to survive. That will also be radically affected by this increase in efficiency that AI is going to bring and that efficiency of energy is going to bring. And we won't need to rip up the planet and destroy the planet in order to provide ourselves with the means of survival. And that's just an incredible opportunity for us to take those resources and apply them in all the other more creative ways that we look forward to.
Yeah, people are obviously going to be a little disoriented in the beginning as they make the adjustment, as we all make the adjustment. I think some of us are going to want to cling to the old system simply because it feels familiar, and we tend to feel safer with things we're familiar with. And then again, you're going to have those who are just going to leap head first into the whole new system and whole new way of doing things, because it's liberating.
One of the things that I think we can do that we'll find is that because we need to abuse nature so much less in order to achieve the means of survival going forward, with this change in our process of living and gaining the wherewithal of our survival, that we can enjoy nature much more. We can care for nature in a much more loving way. We can really be much more environmentally sensitive. And so this is the goal that we're going to get to, I think, very
Beautiful.
quickly, because we have this increased efficiency in gaining the means of getting the nutrition that we need in order to survive. Humanity can expand, we can reproduce as much as we want, we can choose to populate other planets or other moons. I mean, that's hugely intensive in terms of the amount of effort, but those are the kind of challenges that we can then face if we want to, as a
Yeah.
species, to explore, go further and further out, understand this universe more and more deeply, understand the meaning of life in a more and more significant and resonant way. All those
Yeah.
opportunities are things that are going to be here very soon. And I think that the key will be for us to enjoy the process, to really be able to be positive as we
Yeah.
go forward into these coming years when this transformation is happening, to approach each day with a positive sense of expectation and caring for others and real cooperation, rather than looking at this transformation in a way that's fraught with anxiety and concern and worry and competition and negative. So it really is, I think, very appropriate that we as human beings are starting to re-examine the
Yeah.
governmental systems and the productive systems and the attitudes that we have about how we make our choices about the distribution of resources, that we are going to have the chance to be more cooperative and really more caring about, rather than when we face a conflict or some kind of negative event, rather than reacting aggressively, we can
Mhm.
choose to react with curiosity and compassion and just
Wow.
ask the
Yeah.
person, what is going on? What are you trying to do? What is your reality like? Please
Yeah.
explain to me who you are. It's almost like going to another planet. If you happen to
Yeah.
encounter some other form of intelligence,
Yeah.
you say, I mean, the best thing to do is to say, who are you? Tell me about yourselves.
Yeah.
I really want to understand, the
Yeah.
nature of your reality. Please explain it to me as best you can, and I'm here to listen.
Yeah.
That's really the best part of humanity.
Significant shift. That's a significant shift. Absolutely. By the way, folks, if you are enjoying what we're talking about here, please be sure to like and subscribe to this channel. Also, leave a comment and any questions that you might have so that we can design our future podcast episodes with you in mind. Um, so yeah, Dr. Murphy, I think it's this is an excellent topic and an excellent time for everyone to begin to ponder these new possibilities with hope and expectation. Um, what are your thoughts? We got 1 minute left.
Yeah, as you say, just having the courage to be hopeful, the courage to be positive, the courage to choose to believe that the future is going to be brighter than the past,
Yeah,
and that humanity can learn. We as individual human beings, each one of us working with ourselves, we can choose to be the best we can be, the most compassionate and kind and curious forms of living beings that we can possibly be. And thank you so much for participating in this great conversation
thank
today,
you.
Mike.
Great conversation. Thank you, folks. Come back and see us. We'll see you next week.
This has been Snippets of Wisdom with hosts Dr. Mike Corral and Dr. Michael J. Murphy. Tune in and learn about the primary issues facing our society today and find the best chance of securing a stable and prosperous future. Snippets of Wisdom will enrich your life and the lives of all of your loved ones.